Hello and welcome to yet another video. Today I want to analyze the statistics of OTML Season 4. And for those that don't know, OTML stands for Online Terraforming Mars League. And it is basically the biggest Terraforming Mars tournament out there. And for those that don't know, OTML is split into two leagues, the Silver League and the Gold League. The Silver League is basically for lower ELO players, I think below 750 or something. While the Gold League is for everyone above that. That doesn't mean that everyone in Silver League is bad or noob. There are also really strong players in Silver League. But generally, the level of competition is a bit lower in there. I also played in OTML Season 4, I also played in Season 3. Season 3 was still 3P, Season 4 is 2P. And yeah, I want to see which corps performed the best in Season 4. I want to see which corps performed the worst. I want to see which corps were played the most or the least, and also what changes between ELO and maps between these corps. And that's what we're here for today. And let's start off with the statistics for all leagues. So this is for Silver and Gold League combined. In total, there were nearly 1,300 games played, so quite a lot. And let's take a look at the least played corps first. We see them up here. I've filtered the corps for the games played. And we see that Unimi, Thorgate, and Forwolok were the least played corps. And this makes total sense to me. I was expecting these three corps up there for varying reasons. First of all, Thorgate. Thorgate, I think, is just unfun to play and really bad. Why is it bad? Because it has average starting capital. 48 MC is not that bad, but it's also not that great. The tech isn't really useful, the power tech, for anything really. And its ability makes power techs cheaper. The problem with that is that every power tech in the base game and preludes, except one, which I will put on screen right now, just give you power prod and maybe some other effect. Like Quantum and Mass Converter obviously are really good cards because they give you a lot of cheap power prod if you have the tags for them, and they also give you the space discount. But like every other power card just gives you power prod and maybe a bit of cash prod or a bit of heat prod or what else. And this just makes Thorgate a one-trick pony. You can get power prod and a lot of that very cheaply. But if you don't have power tags on your starting hand, and if you don't want to go for a heat strategy and also don't have power hungry cards on your starting hand, then what are you doing with all that power? So I think Thorgate is, and also because of that, because it's so weak and because it's such a one-trick pony, Thorgate is also not fun to play. And then with Forwolok and UNMI, you just need really specific starting hands to make these corporations work. With UNMI, we all know you need a reliable way to increase your TR every gen, either through cheap TR cards like Flooding, Bribe Committee, Nuke Zone, or with like an Oxygen Bumper or Heat Prod. And if you don't get that, then there's no way to play this corp because it's really poor and gets no other bonuses. And with Forwolok, you need titanium and early titanium sinks like asteroid mining. You need titanium prod, you need card draw, and optimally also an increase to your starting capital from your preludes that isn't titanium. Because you pretty much can't play anything in your first gen other than space cards. And that's just really bad. Also, it doesn't help on any milestone, on Tharsis at least. Let's think about Elysium, not really, and Hellas, not really. I mean, on Hellas it's good for Space Baron at least, that's something. And yeah, but that's it. So I fully expected these three corps to be at the bottom of the list when it comes to games played. We'll see how strong they were later. But let's get to the most played corporations. These were Point Luna, Ecoline, and Credit Corp. And actually, there was a tie on third place. Vitor and Point Luna both had 97 games played. And I actually expected Vitor to be in the top 3, just because I think Vitor is the strongest corp in the game. It's really flexible. Like only if you have a pure rush hand, I would say Whitehall isn't that great. Like if you start with Mohole area, Ice Asteroid, and Arctic Algae, then there's better corps to play than Whitehall. Because you won't play a lot of point cuts in the early, mid, or late game with that strategy. But for everything else, I think Whitehall is really good. Same with Point Luna. You get a lot of free card draws that corp. So I really, really like it because of that. It's really fun to play, especially if you have 1, 2, or even 3 Earth packs on your starting hand, maybe even on your preludes. That's really, really nice. And there's Credit Core. Credit Core is really flexible. It's the most played corp here if we combine all leagues. And that makes total sense to me. It has high starting capital, an ability that helps no matter what game plan you're going for. And it's just easy to play and also fun to play. So I expected it to be quite high up. I don't know if I expected Ecoline to be that high up though. To be sure, it's a corp that is considered strong by a lot of players because it's good for rushing if you get some heat prod in your starting hand. But in my opinion, it also needs quite a specific starting hand. It's not good with every start. You need heat prod, definitely. Without heat prod on your starting hand, Ecoline sucks. And then optimally, like a little bit more plant prod would be nice. If you get something like Arctic Algae, you're cruising, and cheap early game tiles like Natural Preserve or Nuke Zone are really, really nice with Ecoline too. But if you just get an average hand or a hand which is tiered towards a long game, then Ecoline, in my opinion, isn't that great. But let's see what changes if we look at different leagues. I figure there will be quite a few differences here, and that will be really interesting. But first of all, please all check out the Discord server I have linked in the description, because on that Discord server, OTML Season 5 will be organized. And I highly encourage everyone in here to register for Season 5 of OTML. It's really, really fun to play. There will be a group stage, so you are guaranteed to play a few games no matter how you perform. And because it's split into Silver and Gold League, it's really a tournament for everyone, no matter what your skill level is. So definitely check that one out. I always have a lot of fun playing these leagues, and yeah, I'll see you there. So now we see the statistics for just the Silver League, and down here in the highlighted cell, we see that it's only 582 games out of 1086 games. That's less than half. That's just because more people tend to quit or like forfeit games in the Silver League, and those games are obviously not counted for these statistics. But 582 is still a pretty good sample size, I'd say. So let's take a look at it. Yeah, if we take a look at the 3 least played corps, it's the 3 we saw earlier already. UNMI, Thorgate, and Forbolog, and I think, yeah, they didn't even change the ordering. Even low elo players recognize that these corps aren't that great and they don't want to play them. Makes sense. But if we take a look at the 3 most played corporations, something interesting happens. Tharsis Republic is the most played corporation in Silver League. And that's interesting because it wasn't in the top 3 or top 4 if we combine the data. And it confirms a notion that I had before making this video already. Tharsis is kind of a noob trap. People love to place cities when they start out playing Terraforming Mars, and they place way too many of them, and Tharsis encourages that and makes placing cities better. And that's why people love to play Tharsis, especially in low elo. And higher elo players tend to be able to punish that by just rushing the game, because cities are only really good if the game goes on for a while, and also if you get a lot of plant prod alongside it. But also I have the notion that people, like lower elo players, don't recognize the best plant prod cards like Insects and NRA and Arctic Algae that much, and don't prioritize them as much. so thus it doesn't really perform that well. And then Credit Core and Ecoline are again in the top 3. And if we take a look at this, the top 5 most played corps are all base game corps, and only then Point Luna pops up and Terraforming Mars. So people love to play base game corps in the lower league, it seems like. Also, Vitor is way down here. I don't know why that is. Vitor is a really good corp, but well, people seem to not like that corp in the Silver League. But let's take a look at the Gold League and see what changes, because that's gonna be really interesting. First of all, the 3 least played corps are again the 3 we saw earlier. But the interesting thing here is, if we combine, like, games played in the Gold League were over 700, which is over 100 more games than in Silver League. But if we combine the games played with the 3 least played corporations, it's only 30 games. If we take a look at the Silver League, 3 least played corporations, it's nearly 60 games. It's 58 games. So to me, it seems like in Gold League, people recognize the weakest corps more reliably and don't pick them. Or if they pick them, they only pick them if their starting hand is really shaped out for that corp. Because even with more games, the 3 least played corps are played the least, like way less than they should be. And if we take a look at the 3 most played corps, something really interesting happens. First of all, Vitor is now at the top. And if we combine that with Silver League, it was somewhere down here. In the Gold League, people agree with me, it seems like, and play Vitor a lot. And I think for good reason, Vitor is really strong. Especially in the last 2 or 3 gens, you can do crazy things with Vitor. You get so much cash back from all the point cards you play. It's a busted corp. And I think in Silver League, players are disincentivized to pick this corp because of the starting bonus that you fund an award for free. And they feel like funding an award for free at the start is bad because they don't know yet what they want to go for. But you can, like, even with just your opponent's corp, especially in a 2P game, even with just your opponent's corp and their preludes, you have somewhat of an understanding what you should go for with the award. If your opponent is playing Ecoline, probably don't fund Landlord. If your opponent is playing Thastles, probably don't fund Banker. And then you also have your starting hand. If you have AI and HET on hand, you could fund Scientist, although there's also a downside to it, because then your opponent will be disincentivized of passing you any more science tags. But you have a general gist of what you should be going for as Vitor, even after just seeing the opponent's corp and preludes, and especially so in 2P. And even if you picked the wrong award, it didn't cost you anything. And it makes funding the first award for your opponent more expensive as well. So I don't think you should be disincentivized of picking Vitor by this free award at the start. I think you should pick Vitor way more often than you're doing right now. Vitor is really, really busted. Credit Core is also in the top 3. Ecoline is in the top 4 and Point Luna in the top 5, which makes sense. They were already high up in the combined data. But then also Belly Trust is really high up. And I love Belly Trust. I think it's really, really fun to play. The extra prelude is really strong. You can high roll with it and find really good preludes. And drawing 3, the likelihood of drawing only bad preludes is really low. So I think Belly Trust makes sense. For me, it's a strong corp. I love it. I love to play it. It's fun. But next up, I'd say we take a look at how these corps performed. All right, I have sorted the tables now for points per game, which is the metric I will use to define how good corporations performed. And how this works is in OTML, for every win, you get 4 points, and for every loss, you get 1 point, just to incentivize people to play their games actually and not forfeit, because for forfeit loss, I think you get 0 points. I'm not quite sure, but the forfeits are not counted in the statistics because nobody's picking corps if someone forfeits. So theoretically, if a corp wins 100% of their games, they should get 4 points per game. And if a corp wins 0% of their games, they should get 1 point per game. And if they win exactly 50% of their games, they should get 2 points per game. At least that's how I think it should work out. And so if the points per game are low, then of course the corp is really bad. And if we take a look at the 3 worst performing corps here, we see Phobolek and Thorgate again. This is again the data for both leagues combined. So these 2 corps were in the 3 least played corps and they perform really poorly. And we see especially Phobolok performs really poorly. 1.59 points per game. This is really bad. There's a big step up to the next corp, Thorgate. Nearly 0.3 points per game. You get more with Phobolok. That's crazy to me because then the next steps up are really tiny. And even if we go to the best performing corp up here, it's only 0.15 over the statistical average or the middle point of 2 points per game. But the weakest performing corp is 0.41 points below 2. So this corp is really bad, it seems like. Saturn Systems is also down there, which surprises me. But I think people with Saturn Systems get baited into tryharding a Jovian strat, and it doesn't seem to work out that often. UNMI, which was also in the 3 least picked corps, is also quite far down at the 4th worst performing corp. So this shapes out as I expected somehow. I didn't think Saturn Systems would be down that low, but I generally think that a Jovian strategy as Saturn Systems is maybe even more unlikely to work. Yes, you get 1 Jovian tag from the start, and yes, you get Titanium Prod to play them more easily, but people will be even more disincentivized to pass your Jovians if you're Saturn System. So if you don't have continuous card draw with stuff like Restricted Area or AI Central, then you're really unlikely to draw Jovian tags. And let's look at the top performing corps, and this is interesting. The best performing corps for both leagues combined is Point Luna, which was in the top 3. Yeah, it was tied for 3rd place of most played games with Whitehall. So it's really high up with 2.15 points per game. But the other 2 corps, funnily enough, were not in the top 3 of most played games. It's Changqing Mars and Valley Trust, which are also 2 prelude corps. And that's another interesting thing here. Taking a look at where the prelude corps are. We have Valley Trust, Changqing Mars, and Point Luna in the top 3, and then we have Robinson Industry at rank 5 and Vitor at rank 6. So for both leagues combined, the 5 prelude corps are in the top 6 best corps. Talk about overpowered or power creep. Like, it's crazy to me. Even Robinson Industries, which I really don't like and I think isn't that strong, performed really well. And the best performing base game corp was Terraforming. And that's something I picked up only lately, that Terraforming is that good. Why is it that good? First of all, it has really high starting capital, the highest base amount of money in the base game plus preludes with 60. Of course, Popolog and IC have theoretically more money at the start, but most of that is locked behind minerals. So if you don't draw well, you might not even be able to use all of that money. So Terraforming is really flexible. And then you get a discount on Earth tags. And Earth tags, in my opinion, are better than average as cards go. So Terraforming makes playing better than average cards even easier. And there are also quite a few Earth tags, not like with Saturn System and its Jovian tags. So Earth tags are really, really good. Where is Credicore and where is Ecoline? Because they were also in the top 3. of most played corps. Credit core is bang on average when it comes to corps, and actually below the middle ground when it comes to points played, points per game. And Ecoline is even worse. That's interesting. So on average, you're not doing well if you're picking Ecoline or Credit core. Actually, the only 7 corps, what is 7? Yeah, that's 7. The only 7 corps that are on average are going to net you more points than your opponent are Inventrix, Vitor, Robinson, Terraforming Valley Trust, Terraforming Mars, and Point Luna. And Inventrix is really interesting. In the middle of the tournament, I made a post about this because at that point, Inventrix was the best performing corp. I think it was only in Gold League, but by points per game, it was the best performing corp at that point. And it didn't stay at the top, but it stayed up quite high. And I think it's just due to the fact that a lot of really, really good plant tags are locked behind global restrictions, stuff like kelp farming, trees, bushes, heather. And Inventrix makes playing them much easier. And plant tags are really strong. Placing greeneries in general is really strong. So Inventrix is actually quite nice for that. But let's look at Silver and Gold League and see what changes there. For Silver League, we see that Phobolog and Saturn Systems are again really low. And also Vitor is really low. That's interesting. Also, Phobolog isn't that far behind the next corp. Saturn Systems is actually really bad in Silver League. I think that could be due to the fact that people really, really overcommit to going for Jovians with Saturn Systems, even if their starting hand isn't shaped out for that. Vitor is really low, also really interesting. Ecoline is really low. I think Ecoline is kind of a high skill stealing corp, so a bit more harder to play. So if you're a bit unexperienced, then that could be a reason for why it's so low. Vitor is really low, and I don't really understand that. Maybe it's due to the fact that people are funding really the wrong award at the start with Vitor. Could be a reason. And what's really interesting is the least played corp, UNMI, is actually the 4th best performing corp in Silver League. And that, in my opinion, could be due to the fact that there are quite high skill differences in Silver League between individual players. And only the good players in Silver League tend to pick UNMI. And when they pick it, they have a good reason to pick it. Because they have a really good starting hand for it, and then they also tend to win with it. But the problem here, of course, is the small sample size. UNMI was only picked 14 times, and yeah, I mean, it's 8 wins versus 6. Maybe in these 8 games, the players were also just really lucky and got great card draw. So we can't really make a statement about UNMI being that high, but just like 2 more games on the lost side and 2 less here, it would be down here. So yeah, difficult to say. And what are the best corps? Point Luna again is at the top. Not surprising for me. Really great card draw, really strong corp. Inventrix is also at the top. But Helion is the 2nd best performing corp. And that's interesting. I really have no explanation for that. Helion to me is really an average corp. It's fun to play sometimes. If you get a lot of heat pot at the start, that makes you really flexible, Helion. If you see that the game shapes out to be a fast game, you can, but your opponent doesn't have any heat prod, you can use a heat as MC and stall, because your opponent will then need to invest into heat prod or find a lot of space events to close out the game. And if he can't, then maybe you can win the long game, or you can just rush down the heat track, get few good plant tags that you unlocked with the heat track, and get a really fast win. Whereas Credit core is also just middle of the road, but better than average point-wise. And where are the prelude corps? That's also something that interests me. Point Luna's here. Robinson, Valley Trust, Whitehall, where's the last one? Terraforming Mars. Okay, they're just all over the place. Interesting. So they don't seem to be that strong in the Silver League. Oh, that's interesting. Well, let's take a look at the Gold League statistics. And we see, yeah, we see Helion really down low. So that's why it surprised me that in Silver League it was that high up. Helion is just average in my opinion. Unimi, worst performing corp, also difference to the Silver League. But again, the sample size is really small, especially in Gold League. Only 8 games played. It's really hard to make a statement about that. Forwalog really down low, and Thorgate as well. So the 3 least picked corps are really far down. Helion is picked quite a lot, but also not performing well. Thus Republic, as you can see, in Gold League, it's not performing well. So that's why people are not picking it that much as in Silver League. But in Silver League, yeah, they're picking it a lot. How did classes perform there actually? Performed actually quite nice. So in Silver League, it seems like people are justified to pick classes. Maybe their opponents don't know that they should just rush the game if someone is placing way too many cities. Let's take a look at Gold League again. Terraforming Mars at the top, interesting. It has a really good economy. It starts out with 3 MC prod, basically the best prod you can have at the start. Of course, Saturn Systems has 1 titanium prod and 1 MC prod at the start, which is theoretically a bit better. But yeah, titanium, of course, can only be used for space cards, so Changxing is just more flexible. And then you get a discount on the building tag, which is the most common tag in the base game plus preludes. There are no other tags that you can come across more often than building tags, so that makes sense why Terraforming Mars is so high up. So you should be picking this corp more often, I guess. Terractor is also quite far up. And then we have Valley Trust, Vitor. Oh, Saturn Systems is really high up. Interesting. It's 5th place. People seem to do good with Saturn Systems in Gold League, especially in comparison to Silver League, where it's the 2nd worst performing corp. So yeah, I think this corp seems to have a high skill ceiling. And then Point Luna and Robinson. Again, if we mark the 5 prelude corps, they are all really high up. The 5 prelude corps are in the top 7 corps. So you should pick all of these corps more often. Especially Robinson surprises me again that it's so far up. I didn't think that this corp would be so good. But you see the difference between won games and lost games is not that big. It's 19 to 17, really competitive. But with Changxing, you see the difference is quite staggering. 31 won games and 17 lost. That's a big difference. So yeah, I think next up I want to look at the differences between the maps. All right, and for my last analysis, that will be the difference between maps. I will just look at the combined data because otherwise the sample size would just be too small. And let's take a look at Tharsis first, so the base game map. If we look at the 3 lowest performing corporations, it's Unimi at the bottom, then Helion and Thorgate. Unimi kind of surprises me. Why? Well, at least UMI has a milestone, which is really nice for it, which is Terraformer. If you have a good UMI game, you're basically guaranteed to get that milestone. And Helion and Thorgate, they don't have anything similar to that. Thorgate at least is kind of okay for Thermalist. Helion, you'd think so, but with Helion, you actually want to use your heat. Even in the last gen, if the heat is already maxed out, you want to use it as money. So this corp doesn't even have an award. And if we take a look at the 3 highest performing corps, it's Terractor, Robinson, and Vitor. Robinson, I have another map on which I think this will perform really well, which we will talk about in a minute. Terractor doesn't even have a milestone here in this map. But it's just generally good. People know how to play a base game corp on a base game map, and it seems to be the best base game corp, so yeah, makes sense. And then Vitor just generally good, also on the base game map. But let's take a look at Elysium. If we sort here from smallest to largest, we see that Phobolog is really bad on Elysium. Well, yeah, Elysium doesn't have Space Baron, which is the saving grace for Phobolog on Hellas. And Elysium, Elysium is pretty good for ground game with swingy tiles like the Olympus Mons, where you can get 3 cards and then the tile that gives you 3 plants. And if there's one thing Phobolog isn't good at, then it's placing tiles and ground game. So that makes sense. Saturn systems, yeah, should be better on Hellas though, where you can at least somewhat reliably get Rim Settler. Inventrix surprises me because Elysium has Ecologist, and Inventrix is pretty good for Ecologist because you can play animal, microbe, and plant tags earlier if they have global restrictions. But Inventrix should also be pretty good for Hellas since there's Tactician, right? And yeah, Inventrix should be really good on Tactician. Top 3 corps. Tharsis surprises me that it's here and not on Tharsis, on the base game of Tharsis, because if there's one thing Tharsis is really good at, then it's getting the milestones on the base game map. Maya and Gardener are pretty easy for Tharsis if you have a good Tharsis start, and Builder is also okay. So getting these 3 milestones is pretty nice with Tharsis. On Elysium, at least you can get either the 3 cards or the 3 plants with your free city, so that's nice. Terraforming, just a strong corp, I guess, and Terraforming Mars, same for that. So no surprises with these 2. And if we take a look at Hellas, we sort from smallest to largest again. Phobolog is at the bottom, so I guess Space Baron doesn't matter. Terraforming actually is at the bottom. That really surprises me. Well, yeah, that really surprises me. For a second, I tried to make sense of it. I wanted to say Hellas is more geared towards engine players, but there are also really good Earth Tech engine cards like Sponsors, Acquired Company, Cartel, Space Hotels, Earth Office, Earth Catapult. So I don't really get why Terraforming is performing so badly. Tharsis, I also don't get it that much. I mean, yeah. Ground game isn't as strong on Hellas as it is on the other maps. You can get the ocean on the South Pole, but often it's not as good placing the city down there as it is if you place it in the northwest next to the oceans. That's normally the better spot for a city. So maybe people place it on the South Pole too often and then lose games because of that, because they're stuck down there with their greeneries. And if we look at the top 3 performing corps, Unimi, Inventrix, and Valley Trust. That's really interesting. Unimi. Well, the sample size of Unimi is incredibly small, just 8 games. So we can't really make any sense out of that, I'd say. I'd say these are just 5 games where people got incredible Unimi starting hands. I think there's no reason why Unimi should be so high up on Hellas. With Inventrix, that is somehow as I expected it to be, because there's a Tactician on Hellas, and Inventrix is really good at that award. And Valley Trust is just a strong corp, I think. Also, you can high roll with the Prelude and get another Jovian tag, which is really good for Rim Settler. You just need 3 tags, so if you get 1 from your Prelude, that's already really good. And you could even get 2 if you get like a wild tag and then higher research outpost or something like that. But let's take a look at Elysium again. I wanted to see where Robinson Industries is. Yeah, Robinson Industries is fairly high up. It's at 6th place. Robinson Industries should be pretty good on this map because of Generalist. And yeah, so makes sense that it's that high up. But yeah, that's everything I think there is to say about the maps. All right, and that basically was everything I wanted to talk about. So what did surprise me? Honestly, Director, but I already knew about it, how good it was. But when I first found out about how strong Director is, especially in high elo, I was pretty surprised. How many differences there are between the different elos. Classes being so strong or so often picked in the lower elo regions is actually quite funny. I think that's interesting. And generally, the performance of the prelude corps. I already knew that at least Changqing, Whitehall, and Point Luna were really strong. But Valley Trust and Robinson, I wasn't so sure about. And it seems like all prelude corps are pretty strong. And you should probably pick them more often. But yeah, I hope you found this as interesting as me. I love statistics and I love Terraforming Mars, so I figured this would make complete sense. And definitely check out, as I said, the link in the description. Check out the Discord server where OTML Season 5 will be organized. And I hope I will see you there. And yeah, keep on terraforming. See you in the next video. Goodbye.